Zoe Washington walked through the gleaming corridors of Westfield Interspecies Academy, with her eyes fixed on the floor. The 16-year-old kept her textbooks pressed tight against her chest like a shield. Around her, students from 12 different planets moved in groups, their voices a mix of English and various alien languages. Zoe was one of only 12 humans in the entire school. Her dark brown skin and tight curly hair made her stand out even more, among both the human minority and the alien students. She had learned long ago that drawing attention was rarely a good thing. The Academy had opened 5 years after humans made first contact with the Galactic Confederation. Earth's leaders had agreed that education would be the first step toward true integration. Young humans would learn alongside young aliens, and together they would build a more unified galaxy. At least that was the idea in theory. "Move faster, human," growled a voice behind her. Zoe stepped to the side as a group of Venturi students floated past, their gas-filled bodies glowing with soft blue light. They didn't mean to be rude. Venturi simply lived at a faster pace than humans. Their entire lives lasted only 20 Earth years. The warning bell rang, and Zoe hurried toward her quantum physics class. It was her favorite subject, one area where she didn't feel completely outmatched by her alien classmates. Something about the math just clicked in her mind in a way other subjects didn't. She slipped into her seat at the back of the classroom, just as teacher Zixtal floated to the front. The Neptunian educator had no legs, just a swirling mass of tentacles beneath a humanoid upper body. "Today we will receive the results of last week's examination," Zixtal announced, her voice melodic and calm. "I must say I was very pleased with most of your performances." Zoe tried not to fidget as the teacher began calling students forward to collect their tablets. She had studied hard for that test, staying up 3 nights in a row. "Draxel," called teacher Zixtal. A large Arcturian rose from his seat. Draxel stood nearly 7 feet tall, his body covered in scales that shifted colors with his mood. Currently, they glowed a confident orange as he walked to the front of the class. Everyone knew Draxel was smart. He was also mean. The Arcturian's confidence faded when he looked at his score. His scales turned a frustrated red around the edges. "Second highest in the class," teacher Zixtal said. "Very good work." Second highest? Zoe wondered who had scored better. The Arcturians were known throughout the galaxy for their mathematical abilities. "Zoe Washington," the teacher called next. Zoe stood on shaky legs and walked to the front. She could feel the eyes of her classmates following her. The quiet human girl who rarely spoke up in class. Teacher Zixtal handed her the tablet with what Zoe could swear was a smile, though it was hard to tell with Neptunian facial features. "Highest score in the class," the teacher announced. "Perfect. Marks. Excellent work, Ms. Washington." Zoe stared at the screen in disbelief. A perfect score? She had hoped to do well, but this was beyond her expectations. A warm feeling of pride spread through her chest as she returned to her seat. She didn't notice how Draxel's scales had darkened to a deep, angry purple. After class ended, Zoe gathered her things slowly. She wanted to message her mother about the good news. Dr. Maya Washington would be so proud. As a scientist who worked with the Confederation, her mother understood the importance of proving that humans could keep up intellectually. The classroom emptied quickly. Most students were eager to get to the cafeteria for lunch. Zoe waited until everyone was gone before heading out into the now quiet corridor. She almost made it to the anti-gravity lift that would take her to the dining level when a large figure stepped out from a side passage, blocking her path. Draxel stood before her, his scales now a dark, threatening green. 2 of his friends flanked him, both Arcturians, though smaller in size. "Hello, human," Draxel said, his voice low and unfriendly. "I wanted to talk to you about the test." Zoe clutched her tablet tighter. "What about it?" "Nobody scores higher than an Arcturian in mathematics, especially not a human." The way he said human made it sound like an insult. Zoe took a step back. "I just studied hard." "No." Draxel shook his head. His gill slits flared on the sides of his neck. "You cheated, that's the only explanation." "I didn't cheat," Zoe said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I would never do that." "Liar," Draxel hissed. He stepped closer, looming over her. Admit it, tell the truth, and maybe I won't report you to the administration. Zoe felt her back hit the wall. She looked around for help, but the corridor remained empty. Everyone was at lunch. I'm telling the truth, she insisted. I studied for 3 days straight. Ask my roommate. She barely saw me. Draxel's scales rippled with anger. Impossible. The Arcturian brain has evolved over millions of years to process mathematical concepts. We are built for it. There is no way your primitive human mind could outperform mine. One of his friends chuckled. Maybe she has a calculator implanted in her brain. Should we check? The other suggested with a nasty grin. Zoe tried to step around them. Leave me alone, I need to go to lunch. Draxel moved faster than she expected. His hand shot out and grabbed her shoulder, clawed fingers digging into her skin through her uniform. You're not going anywhere until you admit what you did, he growled. No human scores higher than me. No one. Fear turned to anger in Zoe's stomach. She was tired of being underestimated, tired of being treated like she didn't belong here. She had earned her place at this academy. She had earned that score. Let go of me, she warned, her voice suddenly calm. Draxel laughed. Or what, human, what will you do? Zoe looked up and met his yellow eyes. Last chance, take your hand off me. The Arcturian's grip tightened painfully. Make me. Time seemed to slow down. Zoe felt something stir inside her. Something that had been sleeping for years, waiting for this moment. A strange warmth spread from her chest to her fingertips. Her vision sharpened until she could see the tiny patterns within Draxel's scales. 10 seconds passed in complete silence. Then Draxel's smug expression changed to confusion. His hand on her shoulder began to shake. He tried to maintain his grip, but his arm moved against his will, slowly lifting away from her. What? What are you doing? He gasped. Zoe didn't answer. She didn't fully understand what was happening, either. She only knew that she wanted him away from her, and somehow her desire was becoming reality. Draxel stumbled backward as if pushed by invisible hands. His friends watched in shock as their leader was forced to his knees, then pressed, flat onto his back on the corridor floor. Zoe stood over him, her eyes now glowing with a faint purple light. She felt powerful. She felt free. I didn't cheat, she said quietly. I'm just smarter than you thought. Students began to fill the corridor, returning from lunch. They stopped and stared at the scene before them. The feared Arcturian bully, pinned to the ground by some unseen force, while the quiet human girl stood calmly nearby. What is happening here? Demanded a stern voice. Principal Clurix hurried down the hall, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in alarm. Zoe exhaled slowly. The purple glow faded from her eyes. Draxel scrambled to his feet as the invisible force released him. He put his hands on me, Zoe explained simply. I defended myself. As whispers spread through the growing crowd, Zoe realized her life at the academy would never be the same. The secret her family had protected for years was now exposed. The bully had put his hands on the wrong girl indeed. Everyone in the corridor stared at Zoe. The silence was so complete that she could hear the soft hum of the school's air filtration system. Principal Clurix moved forward, his 4 eyes blinking in different patterns, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. My office. Both of you. Now, the principal said. Draxel got to his feet slowly, his scales now a pale yellow color that Zoe had never seen on him before. He kept his distance from her as they walked, staying at least 5 feet away at all times. The whispers started as soon as they began to move. Alien students of all shapes and sizes pressed against the walls to let them pass. Some pointed. Others took out their communication devices to record the scene. Did you see that? The human girl did something to him. But how? Humans don't have powers. My parent told me humans were dangerous. Zoe kept her eyes forward, trying to ignore the comments. She had spent her entire life at the academy trying to blend in, to be just another student. Now that was impossible. Principal Clurix's office was at the end of the administrative wing. The door slid open automatically as they approached. Inside, the room was designed to accommodate visitors of many different species. There were standard chairs for humanoids, floating platforms for gas-based life forms, and shallow pools for aquatic beings. "Sit," Principal Clorix ordered, pointing to 2 chairs in front of his desk. Zoe took the seat on the left. Draxel hesitated before sitting as far away from her as possible while still being in front of the desk. "Now," the principal said, settling, his 8-foot-tall body into his own specially designed chair. "Would someone please explain what I just witnessed in the corridor?" Neither student spoke at first. Zoe's heart was still racing. She had never used her abilities in public before. Her mother had always been clear about the rules. Never reveal what you can do, never draw attention, never give them a reason to fear you. "She attacked me," Draxel finally said, his voice unusually high. With her mind, humans aren't supposed to be able to do that. Principal Clorix turned all 4 eyes toward Zoe. "Ms. Washington, is this accurate?" Zoe took a deep breath. "He grabbed me and wouldn't let go. I defended myself. By using telekinetic abilities that, according to all official Confederation records, humans do not possess." The principal's tone was sharp. Zoe struggled to find the right words. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? "Yes, I used an ability I have, but only because he attacked me first." The principal tapped a pattern on his desk. A holographic display appeared in the air between them, showing the corridor from above. Zoe watched as the scene played out from the beginning, Draxel and his friends cornering her, the argument, his hand grabbing her shoulder, and then the strange 10 seconds where nothing seemed to happen, followed by Draxel being forced to the ground. "The security system recorded the entire incident," Principal Clorix said. "It appears that you, Draxel, did initiate physical contact." The Arcturian's scales darkened with embarrassment. "I just grabbed her shoulder. I didn't hurt her." "Your species possesses 5 times the physical strength of a human," the principal reminded him. "What might seem like a simple grasp to you could cause significant pain to Ms. Washington." Draxel looked down at his clawed hands. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted her to admit she cheated on the test." "I didn't cheat," Zoe said firmly. The principal turned back to the holographic display. "The more pressing issue is what happened next." He froze the image on Zoe's face, her eyes glowing purple. "This is not a known human ability. The door to The office slid open before Zoe could respond. A tall woman with dark skin and curly hair pulled back into a neat bun strode in. She wore a white lab coat with the Confederation Science Division logo on the shoulder. "Dr. Washington," Principal Clorix greeted her, standing up. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Zoe's mother nodded but went straight to her daughter. "Are you hurt?" she asked, examining Zoe's shoulder where Draxel had grabbed her. "I'm okay, Mom," Zoe said quietly. Dr. Maya Washington turned to face the principal. "I understand there was an incident. Your daughter used abilities that are not documented in any official Confederation records about humans," Principal Clorix said. "This raises serious security concerns." Maya's expression remained calm, but Zoe could see the tension in her mother's shoulders. "My daughter defended herself against a stronger opponent who physically assaulted her. I see no security concern in that. The concern, Dr. Washington, is that humanity appears to have concealed important information from the Confederation. Information about telekinetic abilities that could be viewed as weapons." Maya sighed. "May I sit?" She took a seat next to Zoe. "What my daughter did is not classified as a weapon. It's classified as an evolutionary adaptation." Draxel made a noise that sounded like a snort. "Humans don't evolve that fast." Maya turned to look at him. "Actually, young man, in the right circumstances, we do." She looked back at the principal. "I assume this conversation is confidential?" Principal Clorix nodded. "Of course. 30 years ago, Earth experienced what we now call the Proxima Centauri event. Unusual radiation from that star reached our planet. Most people were unaffected, but about 3% of the population experienced genetic changes." Zoe listened carefully. Her mother rarely talked about this, even at home. These changes remained dormant in most cases, Maya continued. But in some individuals, particularly during adolescence or times of stress, new abilities began to manifest. Like telekinesis, Principal Clorick said. That's one expression, yes, there are others. Enhanced intelligence, accelerated healing, energy manipulation. The principal's eyes blinked in an uneven pattern. And the Confederation Council knows about this? Of course they do, Maya said firmly. It's in the classified appendix of Earth's membership agreement. Section 7, paragraphs 12 through 36 deal specifically with human evolutionary adaptations. If it's classified, why wasn't I informed? I have human students in my school. Need to know basis, Maya replied. The Confederation and Earth agreed that public knowledge might create unnecessary fear or prejudice during the early integration period. Principal Clorick settled back in his chair. Well, it's no longer classified in this school. At least 20 students witnessed what happened. Zoe felt sick. Everything her mother had warned her about was happening. People would be afraid. They would see her as different, as dangerous. What happens now? She asked in a small voice. The principal considered for a moment. Draxel, you will receive 2 weeks of detention for initiating physical contact with another student. That violates our most basic rules. The Arcturian's scales rippled with shame, but he nodded. As for you, Ms. Washington, the principal continued, you were defending yourself, which our rules allow. However, the use of undisclosed abilities has created a situation we must address. I will need to inform the faculty and student body about what has happened. I understand, Zoe said, though her heart sank. You may both return to your dormitories for the remainder of the day, Principal Clorick said. Classes will resume tomorrow. As normal. Draxel left quickly, not looking at either of the humans. When the door closed behind him, Zoe turned to her mother. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to use it, it just happened. Maya pulled her daughter into a hug. It's not your fault, sweetheart. We knew this day might come. We just hoped it would be later, after people were more used to having humans around. Everyone's going to be scared of me now. Maya pulled back to look Zoe in the eyes. Not everyone, and those who are will learn. Change is always frightening at first. As they left the principal's office, Zoe wondered if things would ever be the same again. She had spent so long trying to prove that humans belonged at the academy. Now she would have to prove that she belonged there too, powers and all. Zoe sat on her bed in the dormitory room she shared with Lily Parker, a human girl from Seattle with bright red hair and freckles. They had been roommates for 2 years but had never become close friends. Lily was outgoing and popular even among the alien students, while Zoe had always kept to herself. Is it true? Lily asked from across the room. Everyone is talking about it. They say you threw Draxel across the hallway without touching him. Zoe sighed. News traveled fast in the academy. I didn't throw him. I just pushed him away. With your mind. Lily's eyes were wide with excitement rather than fear. That is so cool. Can all black people do that? Despite everything, Zoe laughed. No, it's not a race thing. It's a genetic thing. Some humans have it, some don't. Do I have it? Lily asked, coming to sit on the edge of Zoe's bed. I don't know. Maybe. It usually shows up during stress or danger. Lily frowned. I've been stressed plenty of times during exams, but I've never made anything float. It's more complicated than that, Zoe said. My mom could explain it better. Her communication device beeped with a message. Zoe checked it and groaned. Great. Principal Clorick is holding a special assembly tomorrow morning. To talk about recent events, that means me. At least you won't have to hide anymore, Lily offered. That must have been hard. Zoe looked at her roommate in surprise. They had lived together for 2 years, but this was the first time Lily had shown any real interest in getting to know her. It was, Zoe admitted. My mom has been teaching me to control it since I was 10, but it's not easy, especially when someone makes you angry. Like Draxel, Lily nodded. He's such a jerk. Half the school is probably glad you put him in his place. And the other half? Lily shrugged. The other half is probably scared, but they'll get over it. Zoe wasn't so sure. Humans were still the newcomers in the Confederation. Many alien species remained unsure about allowing Earth to join, arguing that humans were too unpredictable, too aggressive. Her thoughts were interrupted by another message on her device. This one was from her mother. "Come to my quarters for dinner," it read. "We need to talk." Zoe said goodbye to Lily and made her way through the quiet corridors to the faculty living area. Unlike earlier, the hallways were now mostly empty. The few students she passed stared openly or whispered to each other. One young Trilaxian even changed direction to avoid walking past her. Her mother's quarters were larger than the student dormitories, but still simple. Maya Washington had never cared much for fancy things. As a leading xenobiologist in the Confederation Science Division, she could have had a much grander apartment in the city, but she had chosen to live at the academy to be close to Zoe. "Come in," Maya called when Zoe knocked. Inside, Zoe was surprised to find they weren't alone. A tall, elegant alien with luminescent skin stood by the window. She wore the formal robes of a Confederation diplomat. "Zoe, this is Ambassador Nixala," her mother said. "She's here to help with tomorrow's assembly." Zoe gave the traditional Confederation greeting, touching her forehead and then her heart. "It's an honor, Ambassador." Nixala returned the gesture. "The honor is mine, young one. I've heard much about you from your mother." They sat down to a dinner of earth foods that Maya had prepared herself. Rice, vegetables, and a protein that tasted like chicken, but was actually made from plants. It was hard to get real earth food this far from home. "I know you're worried about tomorrow," Maya said as they ate. "But Ambassador Nixala believes this might actually be a good thing." Zoe looked up in surprise. "How can it be good? Everyone is going to be afraid of me now." "Fear comes from ignorance," the ambassador said, her voice musical and soothing. "Tomorrow we have a chance to replace that ignorance with understanding." "What do you mean?" Maya reached across the table and took Zoe's hand. "The Confederation Council has decided it's time for full disclosure about human abilities, not just to the Academy, but to all member worlds." Zoe nearly choked on her food. "What? Why now?" "Because it was always the plan," Ambassador Nixala said. "We've been preparing for this moment for years. Your incident with the Arcturian student simply moved up our timeline." Zoe looked back and forth between her mother and the ambassador. "I don't understand. Why keep it secret at all if you were planning to tell everyone anyway?" Maya smiled sadly. "Fear, honey. When we first joined the Confederation, many species were already nervous about humans. We're one of the few species that evolved through constant conflict and adaptation. Most other intelligent life developed in stable environments without much competition. Which makes humans unique," the ambassador added. "And uniqueness can be frightening to those who don't understand it. So the Confederation hid what some of us can do?" "Not hid," Maya corrected. "We agreed to a gradual introduction. First, prove that humans could integrate peacefully. Then, reveal the full extent of our potential." Ambassador Nixala's skin glowed, more brightly, a sign of enthusiasm in her species. "Your people are on the cusp of an evolutionary leap, unlike anything we've witnessed in 10,000 years of observing sentient species. The radiation event simply accelerated what was already beginning naturally." "But why does the Confederation care so much?" Zoe asked. "I mean, we're just one planet. There are hundreds in the Confederation." Maya and the ambassador exchanged looks. "Show her," the ambassador said with a nod. Maya stood and went to her desk. She returned with a small device that she placed in the center of the table. When she touched it, a holographic display appeared showing various planets and stars. "These red dots are worlds experiencing quantum decay," Maya explained. "It's a process that affects older planets, breaking down the very fabric of their ecosystems at the subatomic level." The display showed many red dots, at least 20 planets. "We've been trying to solve this problem for centuries," Ambassador Nixala said. "But our scientists have reached the limits of what they can accomplish." What does this have to do with humans? Zoe asked. The human brain, Maya said, touching the device again. The display changed to show neural pathways. The way it forms, connections is unique, and those of us with the activated gene sequence can actually manipulate quantum fields in ways other species cannot. You mean people like us might be able to stop the decay? Zoe asked. That's our hope, the ambassador confirmed. Your mother has already made significant breakthroughs in her research. Zoe sat back in her chair, feeling overwhelmed. All her life she had thought of her ability as something to hide, something that made her different in a bad way. Now they were saying it might be the key to saving entire worlds. Tomorrow at the assembly, Maya said, Ambassador Nixala will explain some of this to the students and faculty. Not everything, much of it is still too complex, but enough to help them understand that your abilities aren't something to fear. And what about me? Zoe asked. What am I supposed to do? The ambassador's skin glowed softly. Just be yourself, young one. Be honest about who you are and what you can do. Your classmates will have questions. Answer them if you feel comfortable doing so. And if I don't feel comfortable, then say that, Maya told her. No one expects you to become a public display overnight. As they finished dinner, Zoe thought about what tomorrow would bring. Her secret was out, but maybe that wasn't the disaster she had feared. Maybe it was the beginning of something new. Not just for her, but for all humans in the Confederation. For the first time since the incident with Draxel, she felt a small spark of hope. Zoe barely slept that night. She kept thinking about what her mother and Ambassador Nixala had told her. The idea that human abilities might help save entire planets was hard to believe. She had always thought of her powers as something strange. That made her different, not as something valuable that could help others. Morning came too quickly. Zoe showered and put on a clean uniform, trying to ignore the nervous feeling in her stomach. When she stepped out of her room, Lily was waiting for her. I thought you might want some company, Lily said with a smile. You know, for moral support. Zoe felt a rush of gratitude. Thanks, that would be nice. They walked together to the assembly hall. As they approached, Zoe could see that the large room was already almost full. Students and teachers from all species sat or floated in their designated areas. The low buzz of conversation stopped when Zoe entered. All eyes turned toward her. Keep your head up, Lily whispered. You didn't do anything wrong. Zoe nodded and walked down the center aisle. She spotted an empty seat near the front and headed for it. As she passed, some students leaned away. Others watched with open curiosity. A few even smiled. Principal Clorix stood on the stage with several other faculty members. Zoe saw her mother, sitting beside Ambassador Nixala, both looking calm and professional. Students and faculty of Westfield Interspecies Academy, the principal began once everyone was seated. Thank you for attending this special assembly. Recent events have brought to light certain aspects of human physiology that many of you may be unaware of. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Zoe kept her eyes forward, trying to ignore the sensation of hundreds of gazes on her back. To address these matters, I am honored to introduce Ambassador Nixala of the Confederation Diplomatic Corp. The elegant alien rose and moved to the center of the stage. Her skin glowed with a soft, reassuring light. Greetings, young minds, she said, her melodious voice carrying easily through the hall. 30 years ago, when the Confederation discovered Earth, we also discovered that humans were experiencing an evolutionary shift, unlike anything we had witnessed in 10,000 years of galactic exploration. The room grew completely silent. Even the teachers looked surprised by this information. A unique radiation event had triggered changes in certain human genetic sequences. These changes allowed some humans to develop abilities previously unknown in their species, abilities like telekinesis, enhanced neural processing, and energy manipulation. Images appeared on the large screen behind her, showing humans using various abilities. Zoe recognized her mother in one of the videos, manipulating energy fields in a laboratory setting. When Earth joined the Confederation, Both our council and human leadership agreed that a period of adjustment was necessary before revealing the full extent of these evolutionary changes. We feared that premature disclosure might lead to misunderstanding or prejudice. Ambassador Nixala's gaze swept over the assembly. That time of secrecy is now over. What happened yesterday between two students in our corridors has made full disclosure necessary. All eyes turned to Zoe again. She felt her face grow warm. But I want you all to understand something important, the ambassador continued. These abilities are not weapons. They are not threats. They are evolutionary adaptations that may in fact help us solve problems our own civilizations have struggled with for centuries. The screen behind her changed to show the same image of planets with quantum decay that Zoe had seen in her mother's quarters. Many of our oldest worlds are facing a crisis of quantum decay. Our scientists have worked for generations to find a solution, but we have reached the limits of our understanding. She gestured toward Dr. Washington. Humans like Dr. Maya Washington and her daughter Zoe represent not just Earth's future, but potentially the Confederation's as well. Their unique neural pathways and abilities may help us find answers where we have found none. Zoe felt the mood, in the room shifting. The fear was being replaced by curiosity, even hope. Principal Clurix stepped forward again. In light of this information, I want to make several things clear. First, all students with these abilities have the same rights and responsibilities as any other student. Second, any harassment or discrimination based on these abilities will not be tolerated. And third, we will be holding information sessions for anyone who wishes to learn more. He paused, looking directly at Zoe. Would you be willing to come up here, Ms. Washington? Zoe hesitated. She hadn't expected to be called onto the stage. Lily gave her an encouraging nod, and Zoe slowly stood and walked up the steps to join the adults. Ms. Washington, the principal said, would you be comfortable answering a few questions from your fellow students? Zoe looked out at the sea of faces, human and alien, familiar and strange. She took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, I can do that. A forest of hands, tentacles, and light signals went up immediately. Principal Clurix pointed to a small green Vexian in the front row. How long have you had these abilities? The Vexian asked, its breathing sacs pulsing with excitement. Since I was about 10 years old, Zoe answered. That's when they first started to appear. A Meridian student with 6 eyes was next. Does it hurt to use your powers? Zoe shook her head. No, it doesn't hurt. It feels like stretching. A muscle. It can be tiring if I use it too much, though. The questions continued. Was she born with the abilities? Could she read minds? Could she teach others to do what she did? Zoe answered as honestly as she could, feeling more confident. With each response, then a familiar voice spoke up. I have a question. Draxel stood near the back of the hall, his scales a subdued blue-gray. The room went quiet again. Yes, Draxel, Principal Clurix said, his tone cautious. I want to know if Washington accepts my apology, the Arcturian said. What I did yesterday was wrong. I was jealous of her test score and I acted badly. Zoe stared at him in surprise. She had never expected a public apology from the proud Arcturian. Yes, I accept your apology, she said after a moment. Draxel's scales brightened slightly. I would also like to know if you would be willing to study together sometime. I think we could learn from each other. A shocked murmur ran through the crowd. Draxel was known for studying alone and guarding his knowledge jealously. Zoe smiled. I'd like that. The assembly continued for another hour, with more questions and explanations. By the time it ended, Zoe felt drained, but also relieved. The secret was out, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, things might even be better now. As students filed out of the hall, many came up to Zoe to talk. Some were still wary, but others were openly friendly, full of curiosity about her abilities and her life on Earth. See? Lily said when they finally had a moment alone. I told you they'd get over being scared. Zoe watched as a group of younger students demonstrated what they thought telekinesis looked like, waving their arms dramatically and making exaggerated faces. Not all of them are over it, she said, noticing some students still keeping their distance. But it's a start. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Zoe felt like she might truly belong. 2 weeks after the assembly, Zoe sat in the academy's library with her study group. Around the table were Lily, Draxel, a small blue Trilaxian named Vix, and a pair of twin Meridians called Jax and Jix. They met 3 times a week to prepare for exams and help each other with difficult assignments. This was something Zoe would never have imagined before the incident in the hallway. She had always studied alone, afraid to get too close to other students in case they discovered her secret. Now that everyone knew what she could do, she no longer needed to hide. "I still don't understand quantum field harmonics," Lily complained, pushing her tablet away. "The formulas make no sense to me." Draxel's scales turned a thoughtful green. "It's not that difficult, you just need to see it differently." He pulled up a 3-dimensional model on his device. "Look at the fields like waves in water, not like numbers." Zoe watched as the Arcturian patiently explained the concept to Lily. He was different now, less arrogant, more willing to share his knowledge. The bully who had grabbed her in the hallway seemed like a different person entirely. "Zoe, could you help me with this?" Vix asked, her blue skin flushing a deeper shade with embarrassment. "I keep mixing up the formulas." "Sure," Zoe said, moving, her chair closer to the Trilaxian. "Let me show you a trick my mom taught me." As she helped Vix, Zoe felt a warm sense of belonging. For the first time since coming to the academy, she had real friends. The library door opened and a group of younger students entered. They spotted Zoe and whispered excitedly among themselves. This had been happening a lot lately. Many of the younger students seemed to see her as something of a celebrity. "Your fan club is here again," Lily whispered with a grin. Zoe rolled her eyes but smiled. "They'll get bored eventually." "Washington," Draxel said suddenly, setting down his tablet. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." "What is it? Would you show us?" he asked, his voice low so the other students wouldn't hear. "Your abilities, I mean. I've been curious about how they actually work." The others at the table looked up with interest. None of them had seen Zoe use her powers since the incident with Draxel. "I don't know," Zoe said hesitantly. "We're in the library." "We could go to the practice room," Jack suggested. The Meridian twins were always practical. "It's designed for students to test their species-specific abilities safely." Zoe considered the idea. She had been practicing with her mother in private, learning to control her powers more precisely. Maybe it would be good to have friends who understood what she could do. "Okay," she agreed, "but just a small demonstration." They packed up their study materials and headed to the practice room on the lower level of the academy. The large space had reinforced walls and various equipment designed to withstand different types of abilities, from Venturi electrical discharges to Arcturian strength exercises. When they entered, Zoe was surprised to find her mother there with Ambassador Nixila, watching a young human boy move small objects with his mind. "Mom?" Zoe called out. "What are you doing here?" Dr. Washington looked up and smiled. "Ah, Zoe. Perfect timing. Come meet Sam. He arrived at the academy yesterday." The boy turned around. He looked about 12 years old, with light brown skin and curly black hair. He gave Zoe a nervous wave. "Sam is from Australia," Dr. Washington explained. "His abilities manifested last month during a school sports competition." "There are more of us coming," Ambassador Nixala added. "The Confederation has approved a special program for humans with active abilities. Your mother will be leading the research team." Zoe's friends hung back, unsure if they should leave, but Dr. Washington gestured for them to come closer. "Please, join us." Sam could use some friendly faces. It's not easy being the new kid. Introductions were made all around. Sam seemed especially interested to meet Draxel, as he had never seen an Arcturian before. "Can you really change the color of your skin?" he asked with a child's directness. Draxel demonstrated by shifting his scales through a rainbow of colors, ending with a cheerful yellow. Sam clapped in delight. "Zoe was going to show us her abilities," Lily explained to Dr. Washington. "Would that be okay?" "Of course," her mother said. In fact, Sam might benefit from seeing someone with more experience. Zoe moved to the center of the room, feeling slightly self-conscious with everyone watching. She focused on a set of practice cubes in the corner, each weighing about 5 pounds. With a gentle thought, she lifted 3 of them into the air and made them orbit slowly around her. "That's amazing," Sam whispered. "Will I be able to do that too?" "Every person's abilities are a bit different," Dr. Washington explained. "But, yes, with practice you'll develop better control." Zoe added more cubes to her orbit, now juggling 6 at once. Then she carefully arranged them into a spinning column. "The key is concentration," she told Sam. "You have to keep your emotions calm and your mind clear." Draxel watched with undisguised fascination. "Is it difficult?" "Not anymore," Zoe admitted. "But it took years of practice to get to this point." She gently lowered the cubes back to their original positions. As she did, Ambassador Nixala stepped forward. "Dr. Washington and I have been discussing the future of the Human Ability Program," she said. "We believe that students like Zoe and Sam could benefit from specialized training alongside their regular studies." "What kind of training?" Zoe asked. "Practical applications," her mother replied. "Learning to use your abilities for scientific research, medical purposes, and eventually to help with the quantum decay problem." Ambassador Nixala's skin glowed brightly. "The Confederation Council is very hopeful. Initial tests with Dr. Washington's research team have shown promising results." Zoe felt a surge of pride. Her mother had been working toward this for years. "Would any of you be interested in joining an after-school program focused on these applications?" the ambassador asked, looking around at the mixed group of students. "We're not limiting it to humans with abilities. All species have unique perspectives to offer." To Zoe's surprise, Draxel was the first to volunteer. "I would be honored to participate," he said, his scales turning a determined blue. "My family has a world affected by quantum decay. If I can help find a solution, I want to." One by one, the others agreed as well. Even Sam nodded enthusiastically, though he had been at the academy for barely a day. Later, as they walked back to the dormitories, Lily nudged Zoe's shoulder. "So, from hiding your abilities to becoming part of a Confederation research program, that's quite a change in just 2 weeks," Zoe laughed. "I never expected any of this to happen. I just wanted to blend in and get through school without anyone noticing me." "Well, that plan definitely failed," Lily said with a grin. "But I think this is better." Zoe watched as Draxel and Sam walked ahead of them, the Arcturian patiently, answering the boys' endless questions about life at the academy. "Yeah," she agreed softly. "This is definitely better." As they reached the dormitory building, Zoe looked up at the stars visible through the academy's transparent dome. Somewhere out there were worlds in danger, planets whose people were waiting for help. She had always thought of her abilities as a burden, something that made her different and alone. Now she understood that they were a gift, not just for her, but for everyone. The bully had indeed put his hands on the wrong girl that day in the hallway. But in doing so, he had set in motion events that would change not just Zoe's life, but potentially the future of the entire Confederation. And that was a future Zoe was now eager to help create.